Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here. Welcome you to episode 5 of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. If you enjoy what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast everywhere you can. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and hopefully anywhere else you would be looking for them. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, like some of these wonderful people did. Welcome to our Patreon patron community, Chris Nelson and James L. They are our new patrons this week. James L. in particular is supporting us at the level of a monthly Patreon producer shout out. So we'll squeeze that in here at the end of November. So thank you, James L, for being a Patreon producer for us for this first month. So yeah, that's the housekeeping-ish stuff to get out of the way. There's a couple of reviews up on the site, but it's been pretty quiet a little bit with the Thanksgiving holiday. We're recording this the day after, so during Black Friday. And I have with me, joining me today, I have Cameron Abbott.
What's going on?
What's going on, Cameron? And Frank Pisani.
What's up, nerds?
Hey, so we're slowly inching our way back up to the planned idea for this show of 4 people on per week talking after the first couple weeks where we had like the full squad out there in full force, and then a couple weeks now of 2-person, more intimate episodes with just the holiday. Turns out November is a weird month to launch something in because everybody's busy doing Thanksgiving stuff and preparing for the holidays and all that joy. But thank you to Frank and Logan for holding down the fort last week while I was out in San Francisco. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Welcome, guys. It's good to have you for this day after Thanksgiving episode. That'll be going live. It'll be our first episode of December, I believe. Yeah, based on the release date schedule. So let's dive right in. Cameron, what is new and nerdy with you?
A couple of cool things. I saw Frozen 2 yesterday with the big ol' fam
Very cool.
for Thanksgiving. Follow the tradition we normally do where we see a film before or after Thanksgiving meal.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, saw that. I'm trying to think what else. I've been playing more of Death Stranding. Been playing a lot of Pokemon Sword. Got back into Overwatch a little bit. Outside of that, I just really haven't been doing much else that's nerdy, so to speak.
Okay. Let's talk. You have not seen Frozen 2 yet, right, Frank?
No, I haven't, but I'm definitely open for a discussion. Feel free.
Yeah.
We'll
So
keep it
I've
spoiler
seen.
free.
Yeah. I've seen
I was
Frozen
gonna
2.
say even go into spoilers. Feel free.
Yeah. I've seen it twice now myself. I saw it once while I was in San Francisco. I got to see that with Joey Noel and Belinda Garcia and Kevin and Paula Coelho and one of Belinda's friends, Frankie, who I got to meet that night. And that was cool getting to see it like opening night and getting to see it with like a ton of like with friends, but also with like just all the little kids dressed up in their Elsa like
Oh my
dresses and
gosh.
stuff. It was adorable. And then I ended up seeing it again Wednesday night with a friend of mine here in town. Um, and I am planning to see it as well tomorrow as we record this with my own family. And that's I'm actually probably looking forward to it most tomorrow because we're going to see it at the Alamo. Whereas
Nice.
the first couple times I saw it, one was at AMC, and there were just loud, annoying people behind us that Joy Noel, bless her soul, like turned to them after they talked through like the first 3 minutes of the movie and said, "Are you going to talk the entire film?" And it didn't shut them up, but it got them to move 3 rows behind us, so they were less annoying as a result. But then I also suffered a similar thing seeing it at Harkins on Wednesday with my friend, where like there was a grandmother with her grandkids behind us, and the grandmother was having to explain the movie like pretty much throughout the entire thing. So I was like, I just want to watch the movie and enjoy the movie. So I'm gonna be really enjoying Alamo's no texting, no talking policy tomorrow
For sure.
with the family. But I'll also have to remind my dad to not talk because he sometimes does that during the movies. But that was just my movie going experience. What do you think about the film, Cameron?
I saw it with my family. So it was two of my siblings and their kids. So we had kids ranging from like 17 years old to 3 years old. And I don't think anybody was more excited during the film than my youngest niece, Ginny. She, like, no joke, like, before the film, she was, like, ready to fall asleep. And my sister's like, oh, well, I'll sit next to her and, like, she'll probably fall asleep in the film. No, she did not. She was super like incredibly excited, not to the point where she was like super loud or obnoxious, but just she was sitting in front of me, so I could just see her just excitement throughout that entire film. And like that kind of excitement like radiates, and all the other kids were feeling that excited about it too. And I have to say that while I think song-wise, like, this does not have like the pop catch-all songs that Frozen 1 did. Frozen 1 has like just some of, I think, like, the probably what will be like put it back in time and we'll look back to as definitively some of the best Disney songs of like their current era. Not just Let It Go, which I think has suffered by being too prevalent in the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But things like Love is an Open Door, or Reindeers Are Better Than People, like just all these songs that are like actual like really good Disney songs, they're all in one film. Like there's so many of the songs in Frozen 1 that if they were like the only song that was like of quality in their film, that would be like, oh, that's the one song, and that one had multiple. But unfortunately, like I said, Let It Go has unfortunately suffered greatly in the repetitiveness, and so the impact of that song has, like, I think, lessened to an extreme degree.
Yeah, I think they do a good job without getting into spoilers in kind of addressing that a little bit in
Yes.
Frozen
Oh my
2.
gosh. Yes. When she looks back, she cringes. Oh my god.
Yeah, they have a couple moments where they're very self-aware and self-referential of how big and out there Let It Go really was. That I think like are nice little tip of the hats to especially all of the parents that have had to listen to that song on repeat for the last like 5 years.
Yeah. I will say, however, I think despite that being the case with the music, films like between story, structure, characters, performances of like by all these different like characters, and just the story in of itself and the kind of like deeper themes to it, I think are like so much better than Frozen 1. I actually think this film is like leaps and bounds as a film better than Frozen 1. It's funnier too. It's so funny. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Yeah, I think this one does a great job of kind of they had a cohesive story for this like kind of out the gate, I think. Whereas the first Frozen was notoriously in like development hell for a long time,
Yeah.
and they were going back and forth, and for a long time when they were originally breaking that story, Elsa was like the big bad of the and the big villain of the thing, and before they kind of ultimately came down to making her just kind of overwhelmed by her own powers, and then making Hans the bad guy in that first one. Um, but yeah, so the first one feels, in retrospect, a little disjointed because of that. Like they didn't
That's fair.
pick a direction and like settle with it. Whereas I think this one does have like they know kind of they set up from the beginning. Here's what we're gonna do, and they kind of execute brilliantly on it, I think. But yeah, I agree with your sentiment of there aren't there are a couple numbers that I really like and have like continued to listen to after the fact. Like I really like Into the Unknown and
Just say it. Lost
Christoph's
in the Woods.
song. You Lost in the Woods, yeah.
Lost in the Woods. I'm lost in the woods. Oh my gosh, that song. My brother-in-law was sitting next to me during that song, like during the entire film, and during the middle of that number, he turns to me and like I hear him say, "This is where the film peaks." Like it can't get better. And honestly, like that, the breakout song for me from Frozen 2 is "Lost in the Woods" because it really, it's funny. It's in a way a spiritual successor to Let It Go, in that Let It Go was a big like visual song as well. Like the visuals behind that song were really part of its like why it latched onto people. in that it's just like it's a beautiful song and it's a beautiful presentation in the video. And I think Lost in the Woods kind of follows that up and successfully kind of carries it through in a way that is very special.
Yeah, I think one of the big missed opportunities of the first one was that you have like a Tony caliber singer in Jonathan Groff out there, and his only number in the first one really is like reindeers are better than people. So he was so underutilized in the first film.
So underutilized. He was King George in Hamilton, people.
Yeah,
Like,
and so they do a great job of, I think, remedying that and rectifying that situation here in Frozen 2. And yeah, his number. I don't want to spoil it for people because it was such a like delightful surprise when I first saw it, and whatnot. But yeah, it's a really good number, and they just like they have an idea for that number, and within like the first few seconds of it, there's like a musical cue, so you're like, oh, okay, I know what this kind of thing is, and then they just go full tilt into what that like is in terms of like the visuals, in terms of the audio like style of the song, that it just is it's a ton of fun. And yeah, I don't know if that was the peak of the movie for me, but it was definitely the the most delightfully surprising moment of the film for me. Because yeah, it's a nice little Christoph joint.
letting Jonathan Groff actually like flex those Tony Award musical I think Let It Go is an example of the like the powerful single numbers of Broadway being brought to screen.
Yeah.
Like it's never been done before, like even like Les Mis or anything. Anytime you have a musical that's done in film, but to do it originally, but then to give it the atmosphere and level of performance that, I mean, Idina Menzel is just incredible with, and Let It Go does that. I think this does the same thing for the less dramatic, more fun, funny, and very on the nose humor that Broadway is famous for, and bringing that into a film like this is just they did it again. Like they did it again, and this time they did it. And like as far as the film goes, Frozen 2 is better. Like it just is better. It's fun. Oh my gosh. The funny, like it wasn't like in other Pixar films or other Disney films where it's like, oh yeah, that's funny, ha ha ha. Like, oh, like Rapunzel has some, or Tangled has some like really fun moments. Like, oh yeah, that's funny. Oh, isn't that funny? He likes unicorns, ha ha. It's like I was laughing so hard in wonderful moments of that film, and then but also it's powerful, and it talks about taking control and of the truth, and like really like using it as a beacon to like fix the problems of today by addressing the problems from yesterday rather than hiding them.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think is so important for us to be hearing today as a social message. On top of that, like the film's 10 out of 10, top of the top. It's possibly my favorite Disney film of all time at this point. Granted, I'm still riding high off of it, so I might have to come back down to earth before I can really make that judgment. But my gut reaction is that is the most fun I've had in a film since... Well, I had so much fun watching Jojo Rabbit earlier this year with Trevor. But like that film also has some like real rough moments.
Yeah.
Towards the end of that film. So this film, I'm definitely the most fun and delight I've left a theater with. Like just absolutely, it's just such an absolute fun feeling delight.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking as you're talking, especially with the Jojo Rabbit comparison, there are a couple moments in this that, especially for like a very young audience, which is what Frozen is going to be absolutely catering to, there are some really like dark and tragic moments in this that kind of echo the end of the first Frozen, and like Anna being like frozen, and you think, oh, she might die or whatever. There are a couple moments in here that if we didn't know like Disney story structure and everybody's gonna live happily ever after, would probably be much more impactful than they are. But because we as old and cynical people like can know, oh, something happens and oh, that character is gonna be back, that character is gonna be fine, we'll be okay. But like if you're a kid seeing this for like the first time and you don't necessarily have that film reference necessarily kind of like just percolating in the back of your head. There are a couple moments in this that are going to be super tragic
Oh
to some
yeah,
kids that I'm
and one
very
right after the other too.
yeah
Like,
yeah.
yeah, nope, that's true. You're right. You nailed the head. I can see that.
So it's very interesting, and in both of the screenings I've been in, I haven't seen like the kids like lose their minds and go bawling and tragic and all that stuff. So I think they either it's hitting them and it's the movie's just then over too quickly, but for them to like really have
Sit on
had
it.
to deal with that because it everything does have a happy ending kind of quickly enough that yeah they don't have to sit in that sadness all that much but yeah it's definitely like an interesting kind of roller coaster that I imagine if you were like 7 years old right now seeing this movie um that it'd be an interesting kind of view for them of like, well, what did you think about the movie, and what did you think when this happened, and what did you think when this happened? It's like those are conversations I'd love to have with a kid in a very like Mr. Rogers style type of kind of review and discussion with them. But
I have children that age that could do this, that I could do that with. I should have done
yeah,
that.
I mean, yeah, I would
I
definitely
live with
like
3 kids who I could have done that with.
pick their brains and because obviously the moments I'm talking about that I don't want to spoil for anybody, but I think like ask them what they thought when such and such happened and how they how they felt in that moment if they can remember. I think that's a very interesting dynamic that I don't think Disney plays with enough, and it'd be interesting to see if they kind of continue down that route. One of the other things I want to touch on real quick is I really liked Olaf in this, way
Yes.
better than I liked him in the first one. Like in the first one, he was just so goofy, and he's still very goofy in this one. But he's like they make a big point of he has matured over the last few years, and there's even a very like fourth wall breaking moment where he looks directly at the camera and says like, "Oh, you've all gotten a little bit older," obviously referring to all the kids that have grown up with him, kind of
Oh
thing.
my gosh, yeah.
Um,
There's also
and
like
he's
he poses like some serious like questions of like existential dread.
exactly, yeah. And so it's interesting to see how he went from being like a nice throwaway character to like he is very much more I think in this movie speaking to like the adults than he was in the first movie, but still with like childlike wonder and naivete that also appeals to the kids who are gonna go crazy anytime Olaf is on. So yeah, I like I said, I will by the time this is out and live for everybody, I will have seen the movie 3 times. So I certainly recommend it. We might get a formal review up on the site. I don't know, but
I think you'd have to fight. Like we'd have to like do like a Thunderdome style fight to see who gets to write it. Though that's the problem.
I mean, I've got plenty of other stuff on my plate. So if you want to write it, Cameron, knock yourself out. And
I might.
you
I
can,
just might.
yeah, you can maybe fight Ben over it or something like that. But because he's another one that I'd be very interested to talk to him about on this.
Okay,
'Cause
why don't we just have
saw-
a very special that wannabe film class
yeah,
and
we
like
might do that.
do a Frozen special because I think that's what we need at this point.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we're just going to talk about Frozen for 2 hours or something like that right now.
yeah, because I saw his girlfriend Ava described it on Twitter as a jack-o'-lantern movie. I believe was her phrasing. That was basically what she meant by that was ultimately it's an empty film, but it has so many seeds that were just never given a chance to grow. Is how she described the film, and
Huh.
I personally don't completely agree, but I can also understand where that
Yeah.
sentiment is coming from.
I can
it
see
is
it.
it
'Cause
is
there's a lot
throwing
of stuff
some
that
new
you-
ideas.
Yeah. Well, it brushes past a lot of things very quickly.
Yeah.
An interesting note I would kind of point to that is I was listening to the soundtrack on my way home from running errands today, and there's a song that was cut from the film. And it ties, I think, directly into the very beginning of Anna's, Anna's, her character arc throughout this film. Like, you don't realize it watching the film. Like, it is a little, like, jump-starty. But this song sets up, like, it's definitely set before Anna goes and meets with Olaf at the beginning of the film.
What like? Because I'm not familiar with this song. So what song are you talking about?
So this song is called, let me pull up my Spotify here real quick. It's called Home. It is a... Let me go ahead and take a look at this song. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Home outtake. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, we don't want to get that claimed or anything. It is a 2-minute and 56-second song, which is why I believe they cut it. Where it is very much sets up kind of Anna's... It's very much a parallel to her song, like her opening song in the first film.
Okay.
Not Love is an Open Door or Want to Build a Snowman, but her in the first film she has this song which is For the First Time in Forever.
Yeah.
And For the First Time in Forever this is a direct follow through on that to this is the beginning of her arc in this film, and it plays into the idea of, you know, this is my home, this is what I love, this is what I know now, this is what but it really it pours into how she sees the town. I think a good comparison would be Small Provincial Town from Beauty and the Beast, but not as, you know, Belle looks at her, she enjoys her small provincial town, but she understands its limitations. In this one, it's Anna talking about Arendelle and the wonderful little things about Arendelle that she loves, and the wonderful people, and really goes into about the her connection to the people of this town that she's made just in the last 2 years or so. In the last couple or year, I don't know the time frame on it, but basically in the last period of time, while Elsa has been a queen and Anna's been a princess, Anna has developed this relationship with the people of Arendelle. And it's a total flip from, her being an isolated princess to her really being out and among the people and being a part of the kingdom. And so I think with, Trevor, where the film ends for her, it's a good, starting point from that. So, there is, I think, the jack-o'-lantern argument or the jack-o'-lantern interpretation could have some merit, because there are several points that are, I think, either rushed through too quickly to just kind of be well, it's does it serve the overall story to take time to tell this part? No. But if we had it in, it probably would have been much more detailed and much more filled out. I think could definitely be made there. But anyway, we'll get into that at another point in time, hopefully in a spoiler cast. But I digress.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting, because I had not listened to I've been listening to the soundtrack myself, but I was only listening to the main soundtrack, and that looks like it's on the deluxe, includes all of the other songs that got cut from it. And yeah, I'm guessing based on your description that seems like that.
It is the deluxe edition. Sorry, I have it on Spotify, and that's the first one that came up for Frozen 2.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So yeah, it seems like that was very much a cut for pacing kind of decision, but I agree that seems like that would definitely help kickstart Anna's journey, more so than I think her first number here does. But yeah, very cool, and yeah, I look forward to maybe trying to get the team together to do a little bit more in-depth spoiler casty kind of conversation around Frozen 2. Frank, what have you been up to this last week? We heard, obviously we cut a lot of what you guys were talking about last week on the show. Jedi Fallen Order. What was the other?
Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Yeah. But yeah, what have you been up to?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Not to just kind of keep going over the same stuff every week, I guess. But yeah, I've still been playing Fallen Order. I haven't been able to put in as much time in as I've wanted to. But I've still been on that. I kind of want to go for the platinum on that. I think we were talking a little bit about before. I think I might actually, try to go for the full platinum on that one.
Yeah, it's definitely manageable. I did it while I was in San Francisco last week. Cameron, you playing Jedi Fallen Order?
This is an interesting point. Friend of the show, Jordan, Ben's old roommate, actually, I had a question about the plot line and if this was an overarching thing that I had concerns about from back in the interview, funny enough, that Greg Miller did with the head of Respawn, and kind of talking about the overall story of it. A big part of the plot line, the overarching story, is just so disinteresting to me that it's kind of turned me off to the game as a whole. So I have too many games on my plate as it is. Between trying to beat Pokemon and Death Stranding while also enjoying those games. And then also I started hopping back into Final Fantasy XIV. So I have plenty on my plate that like I can leave that one to other people, but yeah.
Okay. I just was more curious to see if we were all gonna have kind of things to say on it. So interesting because I've played through it. I've beaten the whole thing and platinumed it, and I like the the story for me was fine. It's a Star Wars story. I enjoyed it well enough. Takes place kind of in between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. As like it very much feels like a Rebels type story where you're another Jedi that has survived the purge and has been in hiding and is kind of on the run, trying to stay one step ahead of the Empire kind of thing. But for me, the gameplay was really, I think, one of the big
Mhm.
selling points of the game itself. It is very much that Dark Souls style combat. Um, like Frank, you made the comparison last week to Uncharted a lot, and I would definitely agree that it's Uncharted in the platforming, but as it is more sword fighting combat instead of gunplay, it definitely has more of like the Bloodborne and Dark Souls kind of feel to me. But the reason I liked this game instead of hated it like I do Bloodborne was it has difficulty settings. So like, and you mentioned, Frank, that you started on Jedi Master. Is that something you just normally do?
Yeah,
Like
not
you start on like the hard difficulty or whatever?
not always. A lot of times I'll just do like normal or because like I'm just trying to get through it or have fun or whatever. But because I guess I don't know, something about it and just kind of the game it was like I kind of wanted to go for that kind of that harder difficulty and I ended up and I guess as an update on that, I ended up having to turn it down a little bit just because it was kind of like halting my progress. But like I wanted to still get through it a little bit faster than where I'm at, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I played it on like the normal setting, so Jedi Knight, I think. And I played the whole thing through there. And there were a couple times where I was like, all right, like screw these frog things. Maybe I do want to switch it down to just story mode and get through. And I was like, no, no, I can like these guys are clearly I'm supposed to come back and fight these guys later, so I will do that. Um, but yeah, like that was very much what I appreciated is that it is that the Bloodborne like dodge parry kind of style of combat um, where it is very, easy to be like, oh, well, one or two hits and I'm dead. Um, but I appreciate that, hey, they recognize that some people are going to like that and other people aren't going to like that. And so you can adjust the difficulties. So that's why this game, I think, resonates with me more than those other ones did. Because, yeah, as much as I enjoyed Star Wars, if it had been just nonstop brutality in a Bloodborne style format, I would have been like, all right, you know what, screw this. I don't care about the story that much. I'll like if I really need to know it, I'll watch some Let's Plays or something like that or story breakdowns. But given that like it felt accessible to me, and it felt like it was something I could play without bashing my head up against a wall time and time again. I had a good time with it. Um, there's some
So
things in there.
to
Yeah.
to address, I think it'd be important. People are going to be like, "Well, what was your point, Kim? What thing you?" Because it is like a publicly known thing about like what the story is. But I asked about the prevalence of the plot line of the quote unquote like restoring the Jedi Order or whatever. And from what I've learned about that, I'm just like that is the going thing. Like I think about it as being a lifelong Star Wars fan. I have seen enough and I've played enough and I've read enough of the era that this game is taking place in. I know enough about like what they're trying to do with it, and if it had been a story like that is literally just like a former Jedi Padawan just trying to stay keep on going one step ahead, stay one step ahead of like the people pursuing him and getting involved in something larger than that, that'd be cool. But the idea of like restoring the Jedi Order is just so boring to me, and to know that it permeates kind of throughout as one of the main goals of the game is just no thank you. So
I mean, like, yeah, in I would say if you look at it like from a 30,000 foot kind of view, that's Cal's goal. Yeah, as I think any Jedi has in that era. I mean, like I said, with Rebels and stuff, which I watched through the whole series now on Disney Plus in the last few weeks. Like that, it's it's his goal largely, I would say, in name only. So if that's like the real thing that's turning you off, I would maybe
No,
try and
there's
give it
more
a,
about
a
that.
second
Like there's more
glance.
about that in
But
particular. So there's more about that in particular, but I don't want to spoil anything that I've already
okay,
learned. So
because yeah, it didn't like I'll talk to you offline about it because it didn't feel that like invasive of a story or anything to me. It very much like because in a non spoiler sense, you're following around this um guy who was kind of studying the Jedi Order and stuff, and you're kind of following his tracks to try and like figure out what he had found, and try and like find a leg up. But like, honestly, the story is it largely forgettable. Like it doesn't stick with me as much as like, hey, it's just fun going around these worlds and fighting with a lightsaber, and BD1 is delightful, and like the cast of characters I really enjoyed, and so I enjoyed their dynamic and their interactions far more than like the story. The story, in my opinion, is probably one of the weaker things where it's like, yeah, they're clearly always going to be tied. Anything you set in that era is going to be tied. Where it's like, okay, well, it doesn't end with him, successfully bringing together the Jedi Order because A New Hope happened, and we know the Jedi Order was not back together. So like and they're setting it in a time where and the game ends in a time where they can clearly do sequels still to continue on with kind of this arc between then and A New Hope, and maybe even into and past A New Hope. I don't know. Where they can just kind of play as like, hey, this is an ongoing side story thing that was happening away from the Skywalker saga, but just happening in their little corner of the universe. Because of of the planets you go to in this game, the only one I'd ever, as a I would say moderately well versed fan, the only one I ever heard of was Dathomir, which is where Maul is from, and like his people and the Night Sisters and stuff. Which again, even that like was far more explored in like the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff than any kind of like main canon stuff. So I think it's interesting to see them explore and kind of open up some of that stuff the in this kind of expanded universe canon of the games. I really would have liked to have seen if they had found a way to tie it into like the Battlefront campaign.
Mm.
And there were a couple moments where I thought there was going to be some kind of like interplay between some characters, but I guess like light spoiler, there isn't, or at least nothing I recognized as kind of a carryover between those two.
Like
Um,
Cal was being hunted by that like Imperial squad or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
like it would have been interesting to see like Janina's character show up at the time, but then I'm also realizing that the time of that one takes place following Return of the Jedi, so it was one of those things. The timing of everything wasn't like flashing in my mind as I was playing it, so it was just a hard, or it was a weird trying to figure out like, oh, where does this take place? Oh, that's right, it takes place during this era, and I'm finding that increasingly as I watch stuff where I'm like, okay, which trilogies does this take place in between? Does this take place in between the prequels and the original, or the originals and the new trilogy?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, there were a couple things I wanted to touch on. Just one small thing that you mentioned last week. Just to give you a heads up, the cabins in the ship don't like open up as the game progresses.
Okay, I was just
So
gonna ask about
so
this.
yeah, so don't expect that. It's the like it is much less like the Normandy than and I thought it was going to be the same kind of thing. So I just want to like set the stage for you
oh,
appropriately so
now
you're
that
not.
makes me sad now.
It's I mean like you'll still get like other people on the ship, but they like you're not going to end up going into everybody's like living quarters or something like that. In the way which weirdly enough, like if you want to do that, hey, there's the Outer Worlds. That's a
The Outer
game where
Worlds does
you
that,
can
and
go
it's
and do that.
awesome.
Yeah, they have fun little knickknacks that you can find in everybody's personal cabins. But yeah, so I just wanted to like give you that heads up that the ship really is just like, oh, you can go customize your lightsaber, you can go meditate, and you can go and choose the next planet you want to go to. It's not much more beyond that.
Wah
So
wah wah.
sorry to
I think that definitely like
Yeah.
it makes sense. So, like I definitely like it, and that's what I was gonna ask and see like now that you've already platinumed it and kind of are farther in, like how does that kind of play out, or is that anything cool? But I'm like, oh, that's kind of like disappointing because like I know you like you said too, like you kind of thought the same thing. Like I feel like the first time I was walking around it, I was like, oh, this will be so cool. Like we'll unlock new stuff and like get new people. Like I was like looking forward to that. But I think it makes sense. Like not necessarily like what they were going for, right? Like not necessarily necessarily a Mass Effect style thing.
Yeah, it's very much like Cal Kestis's story of and he has a few people that he like interacts with on the ship and then on a couple of the other planets, but very much like you're there to follow him and the companions that you meet along the way, you can have like the little optional conversations with them on the ship, or after you've docked on a planet, you can push R3 or whatever to talk to them. But it's much less. It is not like the Normandy, a new Normandy or something like that. So I just wanted to set the stage for you on that as you progress through the game to not be expecting that. Because yeah, that was one of the things I was listening to. I was like, oh yeah, no, it doesn't do that at all.
Do you wish they had like put a little bit more into that, or like I know you're saying there may be some kind of companions, but do you wish there maybe was like more like two companions, or kind of like in like I guess basically what I'm saying is, do you wish it was like more of a Mass Effect type thing, like?
I don't, because I mean, I think playing as a Jedi in this kind of in specifically in this kind of game,
Mm-hmm.
like it wouldn't have made sense to have other companions around that are helping you in combat and stuff. So I appreciate that like they stay to the ship and they aren't trying to go out and join you in the wilderness and kind of have those conversations. But the characters that you do interact with throughout the game, and there aren't many, it is very much like, oh, you've got the enemies that or the like the villains that are kind of chasing you and tracking you, and then a couple other like ancillary characters that you'll discover on some of the worlds. I enjoy their stories and I enjoy the resolution of those stories, as a like cohesive narrative for themselves, more so than if it had been kind of the more open BioWare style of like, oh, these guys are gonna like go around with you and you can kind of choose how you interact with them. I like that they said, and part of it is again going to be defined by this also has to serve as Star Wars canon, so it can't be like you can't have multiple different canons out there of like, oh, you chose to treat your companions this way versus this other way. So I like that they're locked into a singular story, and I like especially one of the characters who's a later game character, so I don't want to mention them specifically, but like one of the late game characters, I really enjoyed how their story kind of plays out over the course of the game. So yeah, I very much look forward to chatting with you as you continue through the game, Frank. And feel free to ping me if you have any trophy questions or anything, because yeah, like I said, I platinumed that while I was in SF. I didn't mention this, but yeah, this is a fun story for the podcast. So I got to my hotel room in San Francisco, and I took my PlayStation because I was like, I've got Death Stranding still to beat. I've got Jedi Fallen Order that had come out, so I need to play that if I want to keep up with everything. And then if there was anything else I wanted to try and like jump into, like I still have After Party, for example. Um, but my hotel room, the TV did not have an HDMI port, so I was like, shit. So
Oh dang.
Hate
I
that.
swung over to I think took this idea from Blonde Nerd. I think when she's done it on vacations in the past, I swung over to the Target that was a couple blocks away. I just went and bought a 24-inch TV for for the week basically, and then ended up returning it before I flew back home.
Pro maneuver.
Yeah,
Pro maneuver.
I mean it's one that when I worked in retail I detested, because we would have people do that all the time when I worked up at a Sam's Club. They would like buy a whole bunch of stuff for their big party that they were doing that weekend, and they would like return all of the tables and stuff like the following Monday or whatever. So I was like, all right, so you clearly just like rented all of this stuff from us for free. And so it's very much what I was doing, but also I was like, it's if I really want a new TV, Black Friday's coming up, so I should definitely wait for a better deal to get a new TV, and not one in a foreign city that I'm gonna have to try and trek back with me. So
Yeah, try flying with that thing as your carry-on.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to help you deal with that as like a flight attendant or anything, I would be so pissed.
so it was small enough that like I could have boxed it up and fit it in my suitcase, but I would have had to then like find room for the clothes that had been taking up that area in the suitcase, and I just didn't have that much spare space for my checked luggage. So
For a TV.
Yeah, for a 24-inch TV. Yeah, but yeah, that was my like. Well, I got to figure out a way to do this. So and it came in handy because I was able to play through and beat and platinum Jedi Fallen Order, and I also finished up my time with Death Stranding while I was out there. So yeah.
You packing that TV in your suitcase sounds like the best version of the games case I've ever heard.
I almost bought a few months ago. I almost bought a games case. They did like a little promo pitch thing on like before a Kind of Funny podcast in like the Patreon exclusive like pre-show stuff. And it was like they were selling it, and it was I want to say it was a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or something that they were doing through. If you subscribe to that, they were going to give like everybody who supported that particular venture, they're going to give them like discount cards, like lifetime discount cards and lifetime like replacement warranties and stuff like that. I was like, oh, like if I'm really going to be like traveling a lot, this might be a good enough deal. I was traveling to or from some show at the time as it was, so I was very much considering it. I ended up forgetting about it and not ended up buying it or anything, but I was definitely thinking about that as as I was there in my hotel. I was like, yeah, a games case would be really nice to have right now. So yeah, but alas, not now. Anything else you want to kind of talk through, Frank? Any of the fun, exciting stuff you've been up to in the last week or so? Obviously, we got a little bit of what you've been up to from just last week's episode with Logan. So I don't know if there's much else new in your world with the holiday and all that stuff.
Yeah, kind of not a ton, honestly. I guess especially because like with the holiday, that kind of took that and kind of like work this week took up a lot of my time because I spent like all yesterday in the kitchen. Did you guys want to talk about Thanksgiving stuff, or did we want to just try to keep it to like nerdy stuff?
Let's keep it nerdy stuff because I got to ask you guys something. It's
Yeah,
a serious question that needs to be asked.
Okay.
What do you guys call the baby in the Mandalorian of Yoda species?
I like Baby Yoda just because it's easiest. It's the easiest identifier for it, really.
I've been seeing some Yodito.
Okay. But yeah, what
or Yodi.
Like,
I've seen some stuff like that.
Yodelini, I think, is what like Nick and them on Kind of Funny mentioned, or maybe Tim or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, like Baby Yoda until they give it a name, if they're gonna give it a name. Like that's just like if I say Baby Yoda, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. To me, Baby Yoda is like literally like the joy to my life right now. The fact that I got Baby Yoda. So, this is actually fun. We can talk about this without it being about Thanksgiving. So this is my first Thanksgiving out with my family, and so
nice.
That was super interesting. Because like I've had like a very non-traditional like coming out where like I was 30 and some of my family and some friends already knew and others didn't, and I kept it very private.
It definitely took me longer than it should have to realize that what you meant by your first Thanksgiving out, because like for like when you said it, I was like, oh, you guys went to like a Chinese food restaurant or something, like a Christmas story. Cool. But I picked up what you were throwing down eventually.
The thing is, you know me well enough to know like that's not outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah,
I could do that.
I was like, I mean, it seems like
I do that for Christmas sometimes. Like if I like when my parents were living in California and my siblings went to their in-laws, I straight up went to like Chinese restaurants for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, like for real, that's not outside the realm of reality for me. So, but no, yeah. So this was my. Sorry, I'm still laughing about that. Trevor.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was my first Thanksgiving out with my family, and
How'd it go?
I just kind of reflected back that November has kind of just been a really awesome month for me as far as like my personal life and things with my family and my, we launched that nerdy site. It's been pretty successful so far. I've written some really cool articles this month for Handsome Phantom. On top of that, everything was just totally normal. Like everything's just been totally normal and chill with my family, which is great because one of my biggest fears of being out with my family and just being just not pretending that I'm going to talk about dates that I've been on when I haven't been on a date in years. It was it was nice and refreshing, and I did a little toast to it, and but yeah, it's but to top it all off, add I also got this month has just been awesome. We got Disney Plus, but I think the best thing to come out of November more than anything else has been Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda can heal this nation. It can heal the divide between all of us.
It is very, very cute. I was mentioning earlier before we started recording that the last couple nights have been super late nights for me while I've waited for the various podcasts that we've got to be sent over to me so I can get them uploaded and ready to go and everything scheduled in the mornings. And so last night, while I was waiting for this week's video game list show to be sent over my way, because Christian was being kind enough to edit it for us this week, I was like, oh, it's I can watch all of this week's shows for Disney Plus, and so I watched the episode 4 of Mandalorian, which has much more cute Baby Yoda stuff in it.
It also much more badass moments for Mando.
Yeah, he has some good stuff in there, and it the thing that really got me was there's a lot of in this week's episode of The Mandalorian they dive into, or they go to a village with a lot of children in it, and the children interact with Baby Yoda, and so the thing that I'm really thinking about as I'm watching this episode is all of these fucking little kid actors have known about Baby Yoda for months.
Oh, you're talking. Sorry, I've only seen episode 3. I haven't seen episode 4 yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So episode 4. There's a lot of children in a village interacting with Baby Yoda, and I'm just mad at all of them who've been sitting on having known about Baby Yoda and having gotten to actually interact with Baby Yoda and play with Baby Yoda months ago or whenever they'd filmed the show. And so I'm mad at them for having had that joy for months in their lives before us.
How selfish of them. How selfish.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of those kids though, because they were able to keep that secret under wraps, and even that one person left the script for episode 9 under their bed. The kids are keeping. Yeah, exactly. The kids are keeping it together at least.
Yeah, I mean, it really does prove that children are our future, and the future is bright because they know snitches get stitches. I digress. No, that's impressive. Also, so Daisy, I saw an interview with Daisy Ridley. She was talking to, I think she was on Jimmy Fallon, and she's Jimmy Fallon, he pulls up 2 pictures, one of Baby Yoda and one of a Porg. He goes, Baby Yoda or Porg? And before he even finishes saying Porg, before the word finishes and leaves his mouth, Daisy Ridley's already just oh, Baby Yoda. And he went, wow, really, with Porgs? And she goes, I hate Porgs. And it's oh, okay. That's wrong. You shouldn't hate Porgs, but no, I understand.
It's a valid opinion. I'm with Daisy Ridley.
Porgs are bad. Sorry, Joey Noel. Porgs are bad.
I'm sorry. Porgs are not bad. First off, Porgs being so people who don't know, Porgs came into existence because the gull problem and bird problem on the island they were shooting was so prevalent that they're well, we have to do something. We can't just keep these earth birds in here. It doesn't look right.
Yeah, no.
And so what they did is they put in all the Porgs instead, and they created a beautiful creatures that are lovely and wonderful and bring joy to hearts everywhere.
I mean, it was a very creative solution, but no, Porgs still suck.
I can't believe out of all the that is. I'm sorry. We've you've heard my I've definitely come around on The Last Jedi. I came out of it being I don't know how this is a rough film to I actually really think that the A plot of that film is stellar, and the rest has problems, but still it's just a stellar film overall. And Porgs are the one thing you're no, that was stupid, I hated them.
My stance on Last Jedi for a long time has been I think it has some of the absolute highest of highs in Star Wars and some of the lowest of lows. And when I talk about the lowest of lows, I'm talking about the damn Porgs. Like
Wow.
I do not enjoy
You're
the
like the
Porgs.
person who watches the Ewoks as like an adult in 1987
Yeah,
and like hates them.
yeah.
But you're a big fan of Benicio del Toro, right?
Let's not get into that. Let's walk away from that one.
I mean, he's definitely having fun in the role. Um, but
Why that
yeah,
role exists and what its purpose is there, we don't know. But anyway,
yeah. I mean, well, like some of that also, like he
that
definitely
entire that
feels like a character that in a possible future would have come back in episode 9. I don't know if he will in JJ's episode 9, but yeah, like he was the Lando of that movie basically.
there's only one Lando, and his name's Lando Calrissian. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
I do love that Carl Weathers calls the Mandalorian Mando. Because the
Yeah,
first time I heard it, I misheard that. I was like, "Oh, does he have a name? Is it Lando? Is he also a Lando?" But no, he's just abbreviated Mandalorian.
yeah. It's like he's the only person who everybody's like Mandalorian, Mandalorian. He's like Mando. It's like, oh, Carl Weathers, you can do no wrong.
Yeah, he definitely feels like he is embodying a part of Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian, in his character, where he is just seemingly trying to be like the smooth talker kind of thing.
Well, I think it's very much just like he is that smooth talking underworld guy
Yeah,
archetype that both Lando fits into
yeah.
more than that. But yeah, no.
Speaking
Yeah.
of Mandalorian, that's another one going back to the Jedi Fallen Order, where like when I first started watching Mandalorian, it was like, wait, which time frame does this one take place in? And that was another thing where it's like, is this which of the trilogies is this one in between? and so it took a little while to realize, oh, it's between.
Well, I think they do a great job of like solidifying that, but at the same time keep like not bringing too much attention to it.
Yeah,
When it's like, oh, I have Imperial credits, and he goes, Imperial credits. He's like, the Empire's over. Imperial credits are useless,
yeah,
and it brings up like why the stormtroopers' armors are all like dirtied and jacked up and not pristine like they are in the original trilogy. So also, the guy who plays, I forgot his name, but the guy who plays the broker who talks in an accent like
oh,
this.
Werner Herzog.
Yeah, Werner Herzog. They asked him about Baby Yoda,
Yeah,
and he apparently is, and like I watched the interview with him, he is super in love with that thing. He's like it's real. I got to hold him. It's an animatronic. Two people operate it. One operates it for like the eyes, and the other handles like other facial features. He goes, he's like, oh, and you can tell he's like in love with this thing, and it's like it's because it's the most adorable thing in the universe. If that man with that harsh of a German accent can love and sound like he adores something, there's without a doubt that Baby Yoda is the thing that can unite us in 2020.
yeah. The clickbaity articles I was seeing were all pointing to that he called them cowards if they were going to try and do it digitally. Baby Yoda. Uh, yeah.
I didn't see that.
But yeah, yeah. The Mandalorian's a very fun series. I'm very much
That's such a
enjoying
good
it.
show. Like we'll definitely be a part of. I guess it's a great way of like bringing up like more about
Oh yeah,
that
hey,
Disney Plus show, that D Plus show.
yeah, that D Plus show. We hit our goal for that, so we'll be doing that. Hopefully, get that up and running sometime here in December. Where we'll take like my idea for that at this point is like every week we'll get together and we'll pick like some random thing from the vault, be it like old movies from the 70s or some like Disney Channel original show or movie that we watched growing up that we want to circle back to. Like, I figure there'll be like one like centralized topic for each week built around that selection. It'll be kind of a mix of that wannabe film class, and then also just whatever other stuff we're watching on Disney Plus at that point in time. Because I've been watching so much Disney Plus, you guys. um, unemployment is not unemployment is
Unemployment does that
not
to you,
doing
man.
me any favors in terms of like content consumption. I talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago when I was on with Logan. I'm like, I could talk for hours on this show about all the things I'm doing and watching, because I don't have 40 hours a week being dedicated to a job. But I also know I need to start spending less time doing that and more time on trying to find a job. So
Yep.
that's what I have to look forward
Two things I will say about that Disney Plus show is one, to answer people's questions about what they are clearly asking about that Disney Plus show. One, yes, I will be on the episode of Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Oh God.
And two, I fought long and hard for it, but unfortunately, the show will not be called Gimme That D Plus Show.
Yeah. Nope. Not gonna be that.
Nor will it be Dat Good D Plus Show.
I mean, there's room for
So,
we can talk about individual episodes being that good D plus show. So you still have that going for you.
I do still have that going for me. But as far as like the overarching, I cannot, like, I have fought for it, but I have lost. And there are other hills better suited to die on than this one. So,
Yeah, the Darby O'Gill one is weird because I had never heard about this thing until
it's so good.
when Kind of Funny did an episode of their show where they just went through like all of the thread of everything that is going to be on Disney Plus, and like Greg went off on a tangent talking about that movie, and I was like, wow, okay, what is this thing? And then you have come in as like a second champion for it, in our more immediate spheres. I'm just like, okay, this is apparently a thing.
It's a late 50s, early 60s Disney movie, which means that it is bonkers and crazy, like all those films from that time period.
Yeah, which like Sean Connery is like the lead, right?
Sean Connery's the lead. Interestingly enough, Sean Connery's singing voice not belonging to Sean Connery.
That doesn't surprise me.
It is noticeable. However, is Sean Connery handsome as can be in this film? Yes. Is it also bordering on the levels of like quasi-misogyny that most of his films exist in? Possibly. It's arguable, but granted it is also in Ireland. So I have been told that cultural differences notwithstanding.
Yep. Because it's a very Bond era Sean Connery. So
it's a Bond era Sean Connery, and on top of that, it is a very Irish film, as I've been told. Yep. However, it is delightful.
It'll be a good episode for you and Logan to do, because I know Logan loves Bond.
He loves Bond. I think it'd be a good episode for Ben, Logan, and I to be on, because Ben can be like, what is this film? And like, why does it exist? And I will tell him it exists because life is full of wonder and magic.
Yeah, there you go.
Just like it's filled with leprechauns, or Darby O'Gill and the Little People is filled with leprechauns. And Darby O'Gill and the King of the Leprechauns are like best friends. It's pretty great.
Cool. Trying to think other things. I mean, obviously, like the big nerdy thing in my life in the last couple weeks was my trip to SF, which I got to go to as basically like a final send off from my former job, because everything had already been paid for. So they're like, and it was non-transferable. So they're like, all right, we're letting you go, but we're also gonna still let you go on this trip. So have fun. And so while I was there, I got to go and do Kind of Funny Games Daily with Greg. That was a ton of fun. I had a great time doing that show.
You got to do the Google Stadia review show.
The Google Stadia review show, yeah. Oh, that's
it was
like
excellent.
I've been playing a little bit with my own Google Stadia. It runs fine. It just there isn't enough on there to make me really want to dive in and play it. Because I'm like, yeah, I'm already. Cameron knows full well I've very much like written off my time with Destiny 2 at this point, but as it is one of the few free games that I've got on Google Stadia, I did hop into it a little bit. And
I wouldn't say that you've written enough. I've said that you've closed the book on it. Like you've closed your time with it.
Yeah. So I've hopped into it a little bit just to see how the thing runs, and with my Google Chrome thing plugged in, wired to Ethernet, it runs great. Everything like looks good and smooth. It runs fine. But yeah, doing that episode the day that all the Google Stadia stuff dropped was a very interesting one, because it was like we definitely had a lot to talk about. And the bigger thing though that I wanted to touch on of just going and doing that was it was also the week that like half of them were going out to London, so they were super busy and also like just like constantly overwhelmed and stuff. And so in my brief time there at the Kind of Funny studio, like I showed up and it was basically just Greg. he and I put together the doc for the Google Stadia thing, and Kevin and Barrett showed up to run the show, um, and like uh, Cool Greg, Joey, and Andy all showed up like while I was doing the show, so I didn't see them until after like I got off and we were done with everything. And I didn't end up seeing Tim and Nick because they weren't in yet, and they basically they had a ton of stuff that they needed to work on. So felt bad I didn't get to see Tim and Nick, but I'm very happy for all the success and all the work that those guys are doing. I got to see Joey later in the week, so that was a ton of fun. Got to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I've written a review up of on that nerdy site, so you can go check that out. Really enjoyed it. The plot of that show is it's fine, it's whatever. But the way they handle like the magic on stage, especially as a like longtime theater fan, really won me over and wowed me. So that was a really cool thing that I would recommend to anybody who has the opportunity to go see it, either in New York or San Francisco or any of the other cities that are doing that show or those shows. Go see them. Go check them out if you can. Then I saw a handful of movies. Ford versus Ferrari, which there's a review up on that nerdy site for. Really enjoyed that. Frozen 2, which we've already talked about. And then I also saw Knives Out last week. I saw that with Joey Noel and Belinda and our friend Yusef Magid over at Ubisoft. Very fun murder mystery on that one. It's another one I would very heartily recommend anybody go see. Great cast, very fun whodunit. It's probably the funniest murder mystery that I can think of since Clue.
I'm actually seeing it tonight after we podcast. So
nice, enjoy.
Nice.
Yeah,
I still want to see that.
Yeah, definitely check that out. Brought to you by Ryan Johnson of The Last Jedi. And yeah, just like all the great character actors that are in that film, just everyone's having a blast, and Daniel Craig in particular, I think, does a great job kind of chewing the scenery and all his little scenes. So very much, I look forward to chatting with you about it, Cameron. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much the bulk of my what I've been up to in my SF trip. So yeah, I think we can probably wrap this episode up there. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining me.
Oh wow, it's already been an hour.
Yeah, we've been chatting an hour already.
That definitely flew by.
Yep. As always, it is a pleasure talking to you guys about all the nerdy things, and peek behind the curtain. We're gonna sit down and record our November exclusive episode of this right after this, so we will pick this right back up, talking about that's I think to your question earlier, Frank. That's where we'll talk about some of our Thanksgiving experiences and thoughts, be it this Thanksgiving or others. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining me this week. Anything you guys want to shout out or plug? Cameron, how about you?
All my current writing things are currently up over at handsomephantom.com. I'm currently mining away at some other stuff that I have going on for either that nerdy site or for Handsome Phantom, but they won't be up for probably about another week or two at the very least. Okay. But yeah, outside of that, that's it.
Okay. Follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Frank, you can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to plug, Frank?
Yeah, all I got at this time is just follow me everywhere at Irrelevant Jokes, and just, I guess, be on the lookout for more content in the future.
Cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Like I said, I was on Kind of Funny Games Daily a couple weeks ago as of this episode going live. Right? Yeah, time-wise. I also did RPG University with our friends over at Rational Passions. You can go check that out. We talked about Final Fantasy VI. And then I've got some stuff up on the site. My review of Ford versus Ferrari, my review of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Depending on how this weekend plays out, I might get a couple other reviews up and going, be it Jedi Fallen Order or Death Stranding or Knives Out or Frozen 2. I've got a murderer's row of things to pick from. So I'll try and sit down and crank something else out between now and the time this goes live. So keep an eye out for that. You can follow all of us at That Nerdy Site. Check out thatnerdysite.com for the latest that's out there. If you like what you've heard, please, like I said at the beginning, rate, review, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And it'd be great if you want to consider supporting us up on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite. We are about $25 away from our next milestone, which is going to be That Video Game News Show. It should be kind of a weekly look back at the news of the video game sphere each week. So help us get to that hurdle. But thank you to everybody that has supported to make that anime show happen and that D Plus show happen as well. Very much looking forward to getting those up and going for everybody. So yeah, and then as I said, every patron gets an early access to a bonus monthly episode of this show where we will be recording that in about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, I don't know. And that for this month is going to be probably centered around Thanksgiving memories and stuff with myself, Frank, and Cameron, the cast of this episode. So come check that out if you are a patron. Thank you again for listening, and stay nerdy and be good to each other.